There was a night when my own daughter looked me straight in the eye and spoke as if I'd already expired. No anger, no hesitation. Just the kind of quiet dismissal people reserve for things they think they no longer need. It wasn't the first cut, but it was the deepest because she used something I built with my own hands to push me out of my own life. If you've ever been treated like you were past your expiration date, tell me your story in the comments. Chapter 1. I still remember that night in my apartment on the west side, the way the hallway carried every word a little too clearly. Ariel stood with two of her cousins in the kitchen speaking like I had already stepped out of her life. "He's too old to cook now," she said. No hesitation, no softness, just a flat statement tossed out like a fact. One of them asked if I still made the Thanksgiving dishes. Ariel gave a small laugh. "Please, I'm doing everything this year. My recipes, my style." The words landed hard. Something tightened under my ribs as I waited near my bedroom door hands, still stiff after the appointment at UW Health. The doctor had warned me to avoid long hours at the stove, but Ariel hadn't asked a single thing about it. She carried on telling them how I almost dropped a pot of soup last week. "Scared me half to death," she added. "He loses his balance these days. It happens." That wasn't what happened. My wrist had given out, and I told her so at the time. She brushed it aside then, and now she twisted it into a story about slipping memory. Every sentence slipped deeper under my skin, settling in places I didn't have names for. I stayed behind the door. Letting the moment pass had become my default setting over the years. Interrupting her would only feed the narrative she'd built the aging father who didn't know when to step back. Footsteps moved across the kitchen. A cabinet opened. I leaned forward just enough to see her pull out the old recipe book my handwriting on every page notes from decades of holidays. She waved it around. "I fixed most of his recipes anyway," she said. "They needed real structure." Something in me pulled tight, then colder. No anger. More like fatigue with edges. She held the book like a trophy she'd earned. Ariel didn't see me when I stepped out. She had her back turned, flipping through pages that used to be mine alone. I could have spoken then. Could have told her how that book carried half my life in it. Instead, my jaw locked, and nothing came out. I reached for my jacket on the chair. The cousins kept talking about the upcoming dinner, the seating, the photos they planned to take. Ariel nodded along like a host preparing for a show. Walking toward the door helped steady me. Air flowed easier once I slipped into the hallway. The building was calm, the kind of stillness you don't earn, but accept. My pulse slowed enough for me to get down the stairs. The cool air in the garage met me as I stepped toward my car. My fingers brushed the door handle. The ache in my wrist had settled, but the words from upstairs kept circling. Not one of them had asked where I was, or why the apartment felt so tense. They acted like I had vanished long ago. Starting the car gave my hands something to do. I stayed there a moment, waiting for the breath that would keep me steady enough for whatever came next. Chapter 2. The engine settled into a low hum as I pulled away from the building. Heading toward the Madison Farmers Market felt safer than staying home. At least I could walk among strangers, keep my mind from circling the same sting over and over. That was the plan anyway. Plans don't always hold. Messages buzzed on my phone once I parked along the square. Friends of Ariel, people I'd known since she was little, sent cheerful notes. "Your daughter is amazing, Dan. Those dishes look incredible. Can't believe she's taking over the Thanksgiving meal. She must have learned from the best." A few words innocent on the surface still hit like something heavy tapping the same bruise. They had no idea those recipes weren't hers to claim. Their praise rolled toward her and washed right past me as if my years in the kitchen had evaporated. My thoughts kept seesawing between wanting to protect her pride and feeling something in me recoil. Loving your kid doesn't mean surrendering your name. I stepped into the flow of shoppers. Vendors called out about fresh produce honey jars, loaves of bread still cooling. The movement helped me breathe. A bunch of carrots caught my eye at a stall, mostly to give my hand something to reach for. The vendor greeted me, but a voice behind me pulled my attention. Marlene stood there with her grocery tote, studying my shoulders more than the vegetables. "Wrist still bothering you?" she asked. "A little," I answered. "It's manageable." "Manageable isn't the same as fine," she replied. "It's nothing to worry about." She held my gaze long enough that I had to look away. "Did you tell Ariel what the doctor said?" "No, I didn't want to turn it into a whole thing. That girl will keep crossing lines if you don't set any," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp, just steady. She'd worked in healthcare long enough to read people better than they read themselves. I didn't argue. Some truths you don't push back on. A couple bought tomatoes between us, giving me a few moments to regroup. I thanked the vendor, paid for the carrots, and nodded at Marlene before leaving the stall. Walking through the market calmed me for a while. The simple rhythm of picking up groceries helped me stay upright. My phone buzzed again, more praise for Ariel. I turned it face down in my pocket. Driving home didn't bring any ease. The building felt different as soon as I reached the front door, like something had shifted while I was gone. A box sat near the entryway. One of my stainless steel mixing bowls peeked out from the top. My heart thudded once, then twice. Ariel's car keys jingled from the kitchen. She came out holding a stack of my baking pans. "Good you're back," she said. "I'm taking these to my place. I need them for the weekend." A pan slid slightly in her grip metal, touching metal. My throat tightened. "Why those?" I asked. "They're better than what I have," she said. "And you don't really use them anymore." Her tone wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact, like she was stating something that didn't need debate. She bent to grab the box near the door. "Can you lift the other one for me?" she asked. "It's just spices. I already packed all the ones I need." No apology. No question if I was okay with her taking them. Just a soft kind of expectation, the type grown from years of me letting things slide. The old part of me almost stepped forward to help. Not out of agreement, but habit. Dada's default. Dada's the one who adjusts. My wrist pulsed as if warning me. She nudged the door open with her hip and carried the load toward her car. "I'll bring them back when I'm done," she added. "Maybe. Depends if I reorganize." Something inside me shifted. A slow pull, the kind that changes the ground under your feet long before anyone notices. That familiar instinct to stay out of her way flickered, but it didn't fully land this time. Watching her load my things into her trunk, I realized silence had stopped being kindness. It had become permission. Ariel walked back inside for one last container of utensils. She didn't sense anything different in the room. Why would she? My pushback over the years barely rose above a murmur. "Don't wait up," she said as she brushed past me. "I've got a long night of prep." Her car pulled away, leaving the garage in that steady drone machines make when they don't care who they leave behind. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand. The apartment seemed smaller with her absence, though she'd taken pieces of it with her. Not memories, the physical tools I'd used to build them. A breath caught halfway through my chest. I leaned against the frame, letting the weight settle until it found its own place. This wasn't tension from a single evening. It was the slow collapse of boundaries I never reinforced. Closing the door behind me felt heavier than usual. My feet carried me across the living room, stopping near the shelf where the recipe book used to sit. The space looked bare, but I wasn't sure if the emptiness came from the missing items or the realization that I'd let too much slip. The clock next to the couch ticked steadily. I lowered myself into the chair, rubbed my wrist once, and stared at the spot she had cleared. A thought surfaced, quiet, but undeniable. Whatever this was becoming, it wouldn't stay contained for long. Chapter 3. A vibration from my phone cut through the stillness of the apartment. A name I hadn't seen in months. Tom Riker, an old colleague from my days at the school kitchen, sent a short message. "Dan, is this your daughter's page? Thought you'd want to see it." A link sat beneath his text. One tap opened a post from Ariel's social media. She'd staged a table full of dishes, my roasted root medley, my citrus glaze, the stuffing recipe I'd rewritten a dozen times. She arranged each plate as if showcasing a portfolio. Her caption read, "Meals I learned from my own experiences over the years. Excited to bring my touch to Thanksgiving." The phrasing had a strange burn to it. Experiences, not family traditions, not lessons I'd spent half my life building. Just experiences. Scrolling through the comments didn't help. "These look amazing, Ariel. Your creativity is unreal. Can I place an order for Christmas?" A request for orders made something coil in my chest. Someone even asked if she taught cooking classes. My name didn't appear once. A part of me wondered if this hurt, because I'd expected too much from her. Parents slip into that trap easily, believing your kid will always remember the foundation you set. Maybe she needed space to form her own path. Maybe this was a sign I'd held on too long. The thought came sharp, then softened, then twisted again. Another comment rolled in. "You've always had such natural talent." That one almost made me laugh. Nothing about those dishes came naturally to her. She'd relied on my notes, my corrections, my decades of adjustments. She'd watched me test ratios late at night, then forgotten the labor behind it. A text from Ariel arrived minutes later. "Bakungingoi con lo George." Simple, polite, and it boxed me out with a single line. I typed back, "Did you take the recipe book with you?" Her answer popped up fast. "It belongs to the family, not just you." 2 seconds, no hesitation, no space for discussion. Pressure built in my jaw. Years of tradition reduced to a vague idea of family ownership. She used the phrase like a shield, just enough to justify whatever she'd already decided to do. I opened my laptop to check the digital copies I'd stored years earlier. The folder asked for a password I didn't recognize. She'd changed it. The shared machine we used when she was younger now locked me out of my own work. The cursor blinked, waiting for an answer I didn't have. My stomach dropped. She hadn't just taken tools. She'd taken access. Her message tone pinged again. "Conching sua hetroi, bajunglo." Another dismissal. As if my recipes were a rough draft she'd improved, a tension tightened behind my ribs, the sort that comes when every instinct says, "Say something." But another voice, the older, quieter one, warns against starting a fight. You're not sure you'll win. Years of handling things with patience had trained me into silence. That reflex didn't fade just because I wanted it to. My hands moved without thinking. I grabbed the remaining pages from the drawer, the few she hadn't taken. Snapped photos of them with my phone. One by one. The handwriting looked older than I remembered. The pen marks from my wife's notes on the margins seemed softer now. Next came the texts. Screenshots of Ariel's claims about her revised recipes. Messages where she nudged me away from the holiday preparations. Everything recorded not out of malice, but instinct. People protect what they fear losing. Another step kept my hands busy. I dug through email archives from years back, searching for attachments I'd sent to colleagues. Found a handful early drafts of sauces, spice mixes, holiday variations. The timestamps gave me a strange sense of grounding, like proof that my memory wasn't drifting the way Ariel implied. While sorting through messages, the apartment carried a strange weight. Not loud, but dense. Thoughts circled faster than I could steady them. Every few minutes, the same questions surfaced. Had I pushed too hard? Did she think I was holding her back? Should I just let her take over? Second-guessing carved deeper than anger. A notification chimed again. Another friend, this time someone from church, sent a congratulatory text for Ariel. "You must be proud she's carrying your legacy." I stared at that sentence longer than I should have. Carrying was never the issue. Erasing was. The cursor blinked on the folder once more. Still locked. I shut the laptop quietly and leaned back in the chair. Something had shifted the moment she claimed that book belonged to the family. A line crossed so casually it barely made a sound. But I felt it. The kind of shift you only notice because the floor doesn't hold the same way it used to. Hours passed with me cataloging small pieces of my work, trying to gather whatever proof I could before more disappeared. Not for a fight, at least not yet, but for clarity. Memory alone wasn't enough anymore. Ariel had rewritten so much of the narrative that I needed solid footing. Another message arrived from her toward the evening. Konban hop voinhomban. Ba jong goi. Short, neat, detached. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before setting the phone on the table. No reply felt appropriate. The digital photos I'd taken earlier finished syncing. I opened the first one, the page, with my wife's handwriting in the corner. A small note she'd written beside the ingredient list, "He'll perfect this someday." The breath I drew carried an ache that didn't quite know where to settle. The cursor blinked one more time as I reopened the email archive, searching for anything else I might need before more doors closed. Chapter 4. Nate caught me on my way up the stairwell, his toolbox in one hand and a smudge of grease across his sleeve. "Dan, your girl's throwing some kind of tasting party tonight," he said. "Saw her hauling a whole bin of spices out of your place earlier. Looked like she was late for a flight." The words pushed a tight pulse into my neck. She hadn't mentioned anything about a tasting party. Not one word. If she wanted to take my things, she usually left half an explanation. This time she didn't bother. Nate shrugged. "Figured you knew." Leaving the conversation wasn't hard. Staying steady while walking back to my car took more effort. The idea of her showcasing dishes built from my work without me even knowing something in it tilted the day off balance. Her house sat a short drive away. My hands stayed firm on the wheel, though the wrist throbbed every time I tightened my grip. Pulling into her driveway, I noticed several cars already parked out front. Laughter drifted through the front door when I approached. Ariel opened it before I knocked. The frustration on her face kicked in instantly. "Boss, seriously, you can't just show up. I'm in the middle of something." "I'm here for the tools you took," I said. She exhaled sharply. "You're making me lose focus." Crossing into her entryway brought a wave of voices from the kitchen. Friends, maybe co-workers. A group hovered near the counterforks in hand, sampling whatever she'd plated. Someone commented on how well-balanced the seasoning was. I stepped farther in, stopping near the dining table. Every dish looked painfully familiar. The rosemary blend I'd spent years adjusting. The stuffing variation my wife had loved. Even the glaze she criticized when she was 17 now served like a signature masterpiece. One of the guests clapped Ariel on the shoulder. "These are fantastic. You've got real skill." She beamed. "I've refined them a lot." A man standing nearby asked if she planned to publish the set. "Maybe," she said. "My dad used to help a bit, but he forgets things now. I handle most of it." A chuckle rippled across the room. Someone added, "Parents get like that." The sound didn't hit loudly. It hit precisely, slicing in the way a careless remark can when you're already standing on uneven ground. My jaw tightened, but nothing cracked through. Anger rarely served me well, and this wasn't the place to let it loose. Ariel caught my stare and stepped closer, voice low but sharp. "Why are you looking at me like that? You're making it weird." I didn't rise to the bait. "How many things did you take from my kitchen?" Her chin lifted. "All of it is mine. I'm the one using it now." A few guests nodded, convinced by the tone more than the truth. My gaze drifted to the knife block placed on her counter. The handle of my chef's knife, the one I'd bought with my first real paycheck, gleamed back at me. It wasn't just sentimental. It had been fitted to my grip after an injury years ago. No one else used it. Ever. She'd taken it without asking. Ariel moved past me, grabbing a platter. "Look, I can bring things back when I'm done. Don't be dramatic." "I'm asking which items you removed," I said, steady but firm. She didn't answer, just turned to her friends. "He does this sometimes," she told them. "Gets confused over small things." The room laughed again, softer this time. That didn't make it better. Heat rose up my spine. Still, the response stayed measured. Years of holding the line made sure of it. One of the guests looked between us. "It's okay, sir. She's got this handled." My lips pressed together. No point arguing in a room where the crowd had already chosen their version of the story. Ariel cleared her throat. "If you need something tonight, message me. I'll get to it later." "I need the knife," I replied. Her expression tightened. "It's being used." A pause settled between us. "Not long." "Enough." "Then I'll wait," I said. She huffed. "You don't have to stand here." My hand rested lightly against the counter, steadying the strain building in my wrist. Not from pain, just the weight of seeing pieces of my life scattered around without acknowledgement. Someone bit into the roasted medley. "This is perfect," he said. Ariel smiled again, brighter this time. "I've been working on it." The lie floated easy. No one blinked. Instead of challenging her, I focused on the knife handle again. Its presence on her counter marked a line crossed in plain sight. Ariel noticed where I was looking. "Oh, for God's sake," she muttered. "Fine. Take it. Just don't get in my way." She picked up the knife, thrust it toward me without care for the blade's balance. I caught it by the handle, careful not to drop it. The weight of it steadied something in me, even as the rest of the kitchen buzzed with praise that didn't belong to her. Walking back toward the doorway, I heard one guest whisper. "He seemed upset." Ariel answered quickly. "He's just tired. Happens." I didn't turn around. The door clicked behind me once I stepped out. Her porch light hummed overhead as I walked to my car. The knife rested in my hand, its familiar heft settling the noise in my chest. But the emptiness from seeing my tools claimed so easily didn't dissolve. It lingered, following me down the driveway, staying with me as the engine started, and the evening pulled forward without pause. Chapter 5. The message came in just after 9. A familiar name, Mark Delaney, someone I hadn't spoken to since our years in the school kitchen. The subject line read, "Saw this. Thought you should know." He'd attached a screenshot. Ariel stood in her dining room holding my old recipe book like a family heirloom. Her caption said she'd inherited the Hoyt culinary archive from her father, who no longer has the strength to maintain it. She claimed I'd entrusted everything to her because age had finally caught up. A line under the photo hit harder than the rest. "He wants me to carry the tradition now. He can't keep track of it anymore." My throat tightened. Not from shock requires surprise, but from recognition. She'd taken the story and rewritten it exactly the way she needed. It wasn't enough to use the recipes. She needed to make me small to make herself big. A memory surfaced without asking. The night my wife died. Ariel was 13, trembling in a hospital chair, refusing to look at the doctor. I'd promised myself she would never feel alone or unsafe again. The vow had been simple: no matter what, keep her steady. Carry the weight so she didn't have to. That promise had lasted decades, long enough to blur every boundary I should have drawn. A knock pulled me back. Marlene stepped into the apartment without waiting for an invitation, her eyes instantly catching the papers spread across my coffee table. "You've been at this for hours," she said. "It helps," I answered. She moved closer, her gaze landing on the screenshot still open on my laptop. "So she's telling people you handed everything over because you can't manage it." A nod was all I could manage. Marlene sank into the chair across from me. "Dan, listen carefully," she said. "You're not protecting her when you let her get away with this. You're teaching her that taking from you is acceptable." "She's overwhelmed," I said. "She thinks she needs to prove something." "She's proving something, all right." Marlene tapped the table once. "She's proving to herself that your dignity is negotiable." The bluntness stung, though it matched the truth I'd been trying not to face. Ariel hadn't just borrowed my work. She'd claimed ownership and rewritten my role as a footnote. A fragile one at that. My phone buzzed again. Another notification, this time from one of Ariel's friends sharing her newest post. A photo of her chopping vegetables with a caption dripping with self-pity. Cooking while caring for a sick parent is exhausting, but family comes first. She had thousands of ways to frame me. Tonight she chose the frail, dependent version. One share became 3, then 7. Comments piled on praising her devotion. The narrative grew without her lifting more than a finger. A slow ache gathered under my sternum. It wasn't anger. Disappointment carried a different temperature, lower, heavier, almost still. I tried calling her. She declined the call twice. The third attempt went straight to voicemail. "She's controlling the storyline," Marlene said. "It's easier if you're silent." My hand landed on the corner of the recipe book, the original one she hadn't managed to take yet. The pages had softened from years of use, corners bent, ink fading around the edges. Those notes carried more of my life than most people ever knew. A thought settled. Not loud, not explosive, just steady. If I didn't gather the truth, now it would slip from me completely. The laptop opened again. My fingers moved through old folders. Emails from years ago resurfaced, drafts I'd sent to coworkers, attachments of handwritten recipes. I'd scanned timestamps, showing my revisions long before Ariel ever cared about seasoning. Each file felt like a small anchor dropped into a shifting sea. Phone logs, screenshots, recordings of her statements. Proof she'd taken more than tools, she'd taken the story of who built the foundation she now stood on. Between scans, the memory of my promise returned. Don't let her feel unsafe. Back then it made sense. Grief had carved through both of us. She needed something solid. I tried to become that. But the vow had warped over time, turning into a habit of stepping aside. She didn't see the sacrifice, only the space it created. Another call attempt went unanswered. A fourth sent straight to voicemail. She wanted silence from me. Silence gave her control. The night deepened, though the clock on the stove was the only thing marking its progress. My focus narrowed to the files. I copied the pages I photographed, the way each piece added structure to a story she'd been dismantling piece by piece. Marlene rose from the chair. "I'm going home," she said. "But hear me, you're allowed to protect yourself, even from family." She squeezed my shoulder before leaving. The apartment door clicked shut. Alone again, I kept sorting. The work steadied my pulse. There was no rage, no frantic need to respond, just a patient resolve forming in the space where hurt had lived all day. One last page of the recipe book slid under the scanner. My wife's handwriting appeared in the corner, her looping script noting an adjustment we'd made together 20 years earlier. A small arrow pointed to an ingredient, followed by her quiet encouragement. "Keep this one exactly as you've made it." The breath I drew settled deep. The laptop hummed, waiting for the next file. My hands moved almost automatically, retrieving another stack of notes. There was still more to gather. More history to reclaim before it slipped into someone else's version of events. Chapter 6. The next few days settled into a rhythm that didn't resemble anything like my usual life. I went through folders I hadn't touched in years, emails sent to old colleagues in 2008, photos of dishes I'd documented before social media mattered, handwritten notes from when my wife still stood beside me at the stove. Each file offered a small anchor, a reminder that what I'd built hadn't appeared out of thin air. Marlene stopped by after work, easing into the chair opposite mine. She didn't rush me. Instead, she picked up each scanned page, held it at an angle, and said, "Keep the sequences straight. Time is your best witness." "That's what I'm trying to do," I replied. "Then don't mix the early versions with the finalized ones," she said. "You need them sorted clearly." Her structure steadied me. Something about the order helped my pulse settle. Collecting the material felt less like proof gathering and more like rebuilding a narrative someone had tried to steal. While we worked, a message appeared on my phone. "Leave Ariel alone. She's doing her best. Stop making this harder." No name, just a number I didn't know. The text landed like a small stone thrown at a window. Not enough to do damage, but enough to warn what might come next. Another alert followed, this time from Ariel's profile. She'd reposted 2 of my recipes with a note, officially registered. "Thanks for supporting my work." The comments praised her commitment to professionalism. No one questioned the claim. Why would they? She'd built herself a clean stage. It didn't stop there. I tried to check one of the shared folders we used in the past. The system returned an error. Access denied. Marlene caught the shift in my expression. Locked out again? She asked. Yes, she changed more passwords. She's closing every door so you can't challenge her version. That truth didn't spark anger. Just a tug low in my stomach, the kind that signals something fundamental has changed. Later that afternoon, Nate knocked on my door, cap pushed back on his head. You got a minute? He asked. Yeah. He stood in the doorway, hands in his jacket pockets. A couple neighbors have been talking. Think you should know what's floating around. What kind of talk? They think you're slipping a bit, relying on Ariel for everything, that you forget things can't manage your place on your own. His words carried no judgment, only concern. That's what they're saying. Pretty much. Don't shoot the messenger. Folks just repeat what they hear. A faint pulse worked its way up my forearm. I appreciate you telling me. He nodded once and left, giving me space. Back at the table, I resumed sorting. Every step felt deliberate, photographing the remaining tools she'd taken, logging the notes where she said I wasn't reliable, arranging screenshots of her claims. Nothing theatrical, no big gestures, just steady work. Marlene returned from the kitchen holding a plastic bin where I'd been storing older documents. She slid the lid on and paused, studying me with that perceptive calm she'd learned from years in hospitals. You've got something she doesn't, she said. You have the evidence to take back your truth. She only has a narrative. The statement landed with weight, but it didn't inflate me. It clarified things. I looked over the files spread across the table pages from 2005, printed emails with timestamps, ingredient lists I'd drafted before Ariel even learned to hold a knife correctly. Not trophies, not ammunition, just the real record of a life she'd tried to reframe. The phone buzzed again. Another message from that unfamiliar number. Stop pushing her. She's stressed enough. I muted it. Returning to the laptop, I opened a photo of my wife's handwriting from years ago. She'd written a tiny note next to a recipe for a sauce I'd spent months refining. Don't rush this one, she'd added. You only get flavor from patience. My pulse eased as I read it. Not from nostalgia, more from the reminder that some things earn their strength over time. Another folder opened. More drafts, more proof. They filled the screen in neat rows, offering a sense of structure Ariel's chaos couldn't reach. Marlene helped pack a second box of documents. Do you want this labeled? She asked. Yes, put the dates on top. She wrote them carefully. Once she finished, she looked at me with a steadiness that made something unclench in my chest. You're not being unreasonable, she said. You're reclaiming facts. Her words didn't fix anything, but they made the room feel less tilted. Ariel still hadn't called back. She still held the public version of the story. But the narrative wasn't the truth. Not the one that lived in these folders, these papers, these years of work that existed long before she started rewriting. I slid another printout into the box, letting the lid settle into place. The click echoed softly, marking the end of that small task, and the start of whatever came next. Chapter 7. The morning started with a vibration on my phone, then another, then a third. Notifications stacked faster than I could clear them. A new post from Ariel sat at the top of the screen, already shared dozens of times. She'd announced the launch of the Hoyt Heritage Kitchen, a service offering holiday dishes passed down from her father, but now enhanced and modernized by her. The photo showed her in an apron standing beside platters built from my original recipes. Her smile reached for admiration she'd never earned. Below the post, comments flooded in. Amazing, Ariel. So proud of you. Your dad must be thrilled you're continuing his legacy. A few local community pages reposted the announcement. Then a neighborhood newsletter picked it up, calling her a rising culinary talent with deep family roots. My chest tightened. This time it wasn't confusion or disappointment. It was something more final, like watching someone put your name on a gravestone while you're still alive. A message from Marlene blinked through. Call me when you see this. Before I could reply, she sent a second notification, a photo clipped from a small online magazine. Ariel posed in her kitchen holding a ladle the same way I used to show her when she was a child. The caption read, "Carrying on her aging father's work." Every sentence pushed me back another inch. The kitchen around me felt smaller. The air felt heavier. My hands braced against the counter as I read the article. A line near the end made my pulse jump. She says her father struggles to remember the steps now, so she has lovingly taken on the responsibility. The breath that left my lungs wasn't steady. Then came the final blow, one she didn't hide, didn't soften, didn't mask. A video appeared in my messages, forwarded by a neighbor. It showed me in my old apron chopping vegetables in the school kitchen. Ariel had clipped the footage, cut out the parts where I worked efficiently, and slowed down the moment my wrist flared up. In the edited version, it looked like confusion, hesitation, like a man losing his grip on his own craft. Her caption read, "My dad can't remember how to make this dish anymore, but he taught me enough to carry on." Heat spread through my face, though not from anger. Something deeper. Something that made my fingers press hard into the edge of the counter just to stay standing. This wasn't about cooking. It wasn't even about the recipes. It was about erasing me while pretending to honor me. A sound left my throat, half breath, half something torn. For a moment, the room blurred at the edges, and a wave of something dangerously close to collapse pulled at me. Before that feeling could drag me under the phone, buzzed again. A message from an old friend, someone who had been there the day the video was originally recorded. "I have the original footage. Full file. It shows you working perfectly fine. No hesitation, no memory lapse." She edited it. "Let me know if you need the real one." My hand steadied on the counter. Almost immediately, another notification appeared from Nate. "Dan, I didn't want to wait. That guy at Ariel's tasting party, the one who looked uncomfortable, he recorded her talking. She claimed she created everything and you weren't capable anymore. I have the audio. It's clear as day." It took a few seconds for the words to register. Proof. Not stories, not opinions, not interpretations twisted to fit someone else's agenda. Actual proof. Something inside me shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the subtle finality of a door clicking shut. I reached for the laptop and opened the folders I'd organized. Files lined up neatly, timestamps from years back, ingredient lists in my handwriting, emails sent long before Ariel ever experimented with spices. Each piece felt like a brick, restoring the wall she'd chipped away at. Another message arrived from my old colleague. "I'm sending the video now. Let me know if you need more." The file downloaded slowly, the bar creeping forward in thin blue segments. While waiting, I gathered the documents spread across the table. Digital proof, handwritten lists, saved messages with Ariel's claims, the recordings Nate sent. Not once did I raise my voice. Not once did I curse or slam a door. The work itself steadied me. The original video file finished downloading. My finger hovered over the trackpad for a moment before opening it. The footage filled the screen. In it, I moved with ease, steady, confident, focused. The version Ariel posted didn't resemble the truth at all. My chest rose in a slow breath. The recording from Nate arrived next. I played it once. Ariel's voice filled the room, crisp and unmistakable. "He doesn't remember half the steps anymore. These are mine now." Then a laugh. Someone agreeing. Another voice praising her for taking responsibility. A feeling moved up my spine, not rage, not vindication. Something colder. Something that didn't flicker or flare. A steady clarity. I gathered everything, the timestamps, the original video, the audio recording, the recipes dating back decades. The professional documents from my work in the school kitchen. Each one slid into a single folder on my desktop. The more I added, the cleaner my thoughts became. Not once did I consider calling her. There was nothing left to debate. She'd chosen her version of the story. She'd chosen it publicly, repeatedly, without hesitation. I clicked the folder once, watching the list of files expand. The final piece dropped into place, a scanned note from my wife, the one encouraging patience. The handwriting steadied me more than any breath could. Ariel had the crowd, but I had the truth. My hand hovered over the mouse for another second, then let it go. The folder sat there, ready, waiting for the next step. Chapter 8. The folder sat on my desktop like a closed door waiting to be opened. My hand hovered above the mouse, steady, in a way it hadn't been for weeks. A small tremor tried to rise, but it never reached the surface. The fear that had followed me, the fear of pushing my daughter away if I dared to defend myself, finally loosened its grip. I clicked the file. Every document lined up clear and undeniable. Years of work. Notes written long before Ariel ever touched a pan. Video that showed my movements clean and sure. Audio that revealed her claims for what they were. A long breath moved through me. Opening the social media page didn't carry the usual dread. The cursor blinked, waiting for whatever came next. For once, my hand didn't shake. I uploaded the images scans of recipes with dates from the early 2000s, files of drafts photos from my teaching years, the unedited video. The audio recording sat at the bottom of the post. Then, one line, only one, went beneath it all. These are my creations. This is my work. No anger, no explanation, just the truth. The post went live. A soft thrum of notifications started within minutes. Comments poured in, some confused, some stunned, many furious. People who had cheered Ariel on now demanded answers. A few asked how she could claim authorship of something so clearly documented as mine. Others expressed disappointment they had believed her stories. Marlene texted, "You did the right thing." A neighbor sent a short message. "We see the truth now." Another notification flashed across the screen. One of the community pages removed the article that praised Ariel. Then a local food group took down her promotional post with a note, "Content accuracy disputed." The changes came fast. Ariel reacted the only way she knew. She wrote a long, winding message accusing me of sabotaging her dreams, claiming I wanted to ruin her future out of jealousy. The post gathered a few sympathetic responses, at first, mostly from people who hadn't seen the evidence yet. But within an hour, the tone shifted. Friends unfollowed her. Several wrote comments about integrity. One person who had planned to place an order for her holiday service said, "I can't support this." "You misled us." A collaborator she'd bragged about messaged her publicly, "We're canceling our trial run." Another chimed in, "You owe your father and this community an apology." Her facade cracked in real time. The more she tried to spin the story, the clearer her desperation became. I didn't reply, not a single word. Silence can be a form of dignity, and I let it hold its ground. By evening, the apartment felt different. Not lighter, but something close to balanced. The pressure that had built in my chest for weeks eased enough for me to breathe without effort. The paperwork for ownership verification waited on the table. I gathered the documents, recipes, drafts, timestamps, and placed them neatly into the envelope. The walk to the post office was slow but sure, each step grounding me in something solid. At the counter, the clerk weighed the packet. "Sending important stuff?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Important enough." He stamped it and handed me the receipt. The envelope disappeared behind the drop gate with a soft slide final in a way I didn't expect. Not triumph, not revenge, just closure. The next day, I returned to the community kitchen where I used to volunteer. A few of the regulars greeted me with nods that carried more understanding than any speech could. I prepped vegetables alongside a teenager who watched me work and said, "You're good at this." "I've been doing it a long time," I answered. No weight sat under the words. In the afternoon, I walked through Mendota Park, letting the steady rhythm of footsteps settle my thoughts. None of the turmoil followed me into that space. The lake carried its usual calm. A small pottery studio sat near the edge of the park, a place a friend had once suggested I try. Curiosity nudged me through the door. An older man at the wheel said, "Here to learn." Maybe I replied. He only smiled and pointed to an empty seat. Clay moved under my palms, soft at first, then firm as I centered it. The sensation grounded something in me, slow, steady, uncomplicated. When the piece finally took shape, I felt a quiet satisfaction that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. The next week I brought it home, wrapped in a paper bag. The apartment door clicked shut behind me. I set the small bowl on my kitchen table, the glaze uneven but honest. Not the start of a new life, more like returning to the one I'd forgotten to live while trying to hold someone else together. I touched the rim of the bowl and exhaled, letting the breath carry itself wherever it needed to go.